Star's Journey, Chapter 9. Hey, I called last pancake. Get her to make more. I groan as I wake up to Emma yelling downstairs. Why don't we just split it? Come on, stop being so greedy. Winter's voice rang out. I chuckled and sat up, stretching my arms out and looking out the window. Then to my alarm clock as I noticed the brightness outside. It was already 7 a.m. I shake my head and push myself to get up, knowing if I don't do it now, I won't be able to make myself breakfast. Because she's my sister, so I get first dibs on her pancakes. And how is that supposed to make sense? Just give it here! I could hear Winter grunt and Emma laugh. I get dressed, rolling my eyes as they kept arguing. Don't make me use my demon form to keep this away from you, Emma yelled through laughter. You want to play it that way? Fine, two can play at that game. What? No! Emma screamed as I heard Winter laugh. That's not fair! I walked out of the room and down the hall to see Emma pressing her back against the wall up the stairs. Winter's snout poked just past the wall, and I laughed as Emma held the pancake above her head. I calmly walked down the stairs and grabbed the pancake from her, munching on it as I walked past Winter. I couldn't help but notice the much larger wolf form than I was used to. His soft, silky fur that brushed against my leg as I passed him, his tail wagging quickly behind him before he turned back into his human form. I shake my head and pull out a frying pan and some pancake mix. Well, that wasn't very nice, Emma said, pouting. You may be my sister, but I get first dibs on my pancakes. I chuckle, running a bowl under the tap to get some water, holding it in one hand as I hold the pancake in the other. Do you want to help again, Winter? He smiled at me, almost running to my side. This time I won't burn them, he said confidently, grabbing the spatula from the drawer and a plate to put the finished pancakes on. Why did you let that one burn, anyway? It's not like Star to let something catch on fire. Right beside her, nonetheless. I flinch as I remember yesterday morning, Winter's words ringing through my head, bringing a soft redness to my cheeks. I shook my head, almost annoyed at myself for being so weak when it came to him. I was in charge of watching it. I let it burn because I got distracted, Winter said, smiling softly. But this time I won't. I loved the confident look on his face as he looked at me. I made more pancakes than yesterday, leaving some leftovers for breakfast tomorrow, and Winter was looking through an old school book we had as we were getting ready to go. Winter flinches, hitting his knee off the table and quickly standing up. Emma was already out the door and waiting for me at the front lawn. Starine, Winter said quickly, fear laced in his eyes as he looked at me. He shook his head and calmly took a breath before standing up straight and walking over to the door. Mind if I tag along today? I looked at him concerned. I'll lay low, and your mom gave me some books to study. I'll be up to your guys' level in no time. I smiled at him, shaking my head softly. All right, but don't get me in trouble, I said, walking out the door. Winter quickly ran after me, closing the door behind us. He's walking you to school now, Emma teased, pushing my shoulder softly. Hush! He just wanted to come to school today. I thought, why not? Emma looked surprised as she looked at Winter. He smiled politely. Thought it would be nice, he said softly, walking beside me. We got to school, and it was relieving to know Ava wasn't here. I walked into our classroom and sat down, smiling at Winter and motioning to the seat beside me. We don't have assigned seats, so you can sit beside us, I said softly as I grabbed out my books. A few students looked at him confused but shrugged it off and continued talking amongst themselves. Winter seemed to focus a lot more on what we were learning than I expected him to. Every class he sat straight, learning everything we could and even going through the books our mother gave him. He caught up, learning stuff he missed while he was trapped as a wolf, and more. Ira continued to tease us in between classes, and Winter seemed oblivious to it. The only break I got was when I took lunch to go to the office and form the after-school club. Winter walked with me to the office as Emma and Ira walked the other way to the back doors of the school. So, why are you tagging along? Don't get me wrong, I don't mind. I just wanted to know if there was a reason. I'm sure you would rather study or play outside, I said softly, waving towards Emma and Ira. I don't feel comfortable around Emma. It'll pass, he said quickly. I flinched and looked at him, taken aback by his quick statement. Would you rather me lie? I quickly shook my head. No, it just surprised me, I said, pushing the office door, greeted by the front staff with smiling faces. Hi, I'd like to create an after-school club. Very well, fill out this form, she said, handing me a piece of paper and a clipboard from beside her. Winter sits beside me, helping me fill out the form, from the description of it to the reason we were making it. "All right, there you go," I said, handing it back to her. There was a big smile on my face as she took it. "Okay, you can either have people drop in their signatures from the basket I'll put beside this, or you can go and get them with this list," she said, motioning to a box and then to a piece of paper beside the box. I knew it was going to be busy with schoolwork since I still needed to catch up, so running around and focusing on people probably wouldn't be the best idea. "I choose the box." She nods softly and stands up, setting up the box next to a few others that were gathering cobwebs. "All right. All submissions will be counted every week, so if you get to the 50 by the end of this month, then your club will be made." I feel happiness fade slightly as she talks. The number was much higher than I thought. "Hey, don't worry, we got a while. I'm sure you'll get the votes," Winter said, smiling at me as we walked out of the office to go enjoy the rest of our lunch break, even if there were only about 10 minutes left. "I'd vote for it." "Oh, hush," I say, smiling softly and pushing his arm. "You read that form, right? You can't. You co-signed for the club." He chuckles and nods. "Thank you, though." "Yeah, don't mention it," he said as we gathered our lunch from my locker. As school ticked by, I could see Winter getting anxious. Maybe he had a hard time in school. The amount of people who came up to talk to us, the different sights, smells, noises. It was much louder than being out in the forest. I almost missed it. But eventually, the last bell rang, and we were headed towards our lockers. I sat down as I rummaged for a paper I had dropped behind my books. Emma and Ira chatting beside me as Winter was standing on the opposite side of them, beside me as well, relaxing and leaning against some lockers. It felt nice to have a growing friend group. It was almost like the old town, the small group of friends who got us here in one piece. I smiled as I finally grabbed the paper and stuffed it into my bag. "There we go," I said triumphantly as I swung my backpack over my shoulder and locked my locker back up. "It took you long enough," Emma said, ruffling up my hair. "Want me to carry it?" I smiled at her and took off my backpack, handing it to her. "Thank you," I said softly. We started walking home. Ira started walking the other way as we left school grounds, and Winter was walking a little behind Emma and me. I took this as a moment just to speak with her. "Hey, Winter seemed a little anxious at school today. Do you think we could just have a relaxing walk once we drop everything off at home?" Emma nodded softly, glancing over her shoulder at Winter. "We could show him all the berry bushes." Emma looked happy to go for a normal walk like we used to. "And with Clinton and Carl, along with Ava who knows where, we should be safe." I nodded, calmly pushing my fear as she said her name to the back of my brain. "It'll be great," I mumbled calmly. We got to the house, putting our bags in the closet by the door, and then walking back outside. We walk around the corner of the block and head towards the alleyways. Emma had grabbed a small sandwich bag to put the extra berries in. "So, what are we doing?" Winter said, looking around and walking beside us. "Just going for a walk, ignoring all the chaos from school," I said, turning around and walking backwards as I talked to him. "And we're going to get berries. I can add them to tomorrow's breakfast. There's lots of ripe apples, cherries, and even raspberries, if Emma hasn't eaten them all." Emma rolled her eyes at my words as Winter chuckled softly, shaking his head and looking around again. I softly put my hands in my pockets, turning back around, flinching when I felt something cold in my pocket. It was the small cat-shaped rock that Winter had left for me a few days ago. I smiled as I took it out, admiring the softness of it just to have Winter lean over me, smiling softly as he noticed the rock. "Is that the one I found for you?" I shook my head, shoving it down in my pocket again as my face turned red. He chuckled and stood straight up again, walking beside me. "I thought you would like it. It's nice to know you're the sentimental type." He smiled to himself as we walked a little ahead, glancing at a bush of strawberries that barely pushed past a few fence boards. I tried to hide my red face as I looked away from him. He crouched down beside it, frowning when he saw no strawberries on it, and Emma wandered calmly ahead of us, forcing us to keep up. "Emma, where are you going?" I mumbled softly, noticing a few familiar turns. Winter looks confused as I look concerned at Emma, taking note of her blank expression as she looks up at the sky. "Emma," I say, a bit more sternly as she turns another corner. I glare at her. "Emma!" She flinches and turns to look at me, a bit confused before looking around, fear growing on her face. "Oh," she said softly, taking notice of a few burnt wood chips below her feet. I guess it's just ingrained in my head. My regular walking path or something. Let's just get out of here, I mumbled, feeling a chill run up my spine. I looked at Emma as she stood still, looking at the dark dead end in front of us. What's wrong with this place? Winter said softly, putting his hand on my shoulder. Only bad things end up happening when we travel this far into the alleyways. We were attacked here once. I groaned, walking towards Emma to try and snap her out of whatever space she was in. Come on, sis. We should keep looking for berries. Wait, she said sharply, her body shaking against my hand as I put it on her shoulder. I flinched at her words and paused, listening to the noises around us to see if that's what was bothering her. There were soft chirps of birds, some distant talking, and some noise from the streets around us. There was nothing to note, just regular city noise. Emma, come on, there's nothing here, I said, groaning and grabbing her arm, trying to pull her. Stop, there's something wrong, something is wrong. Winter whined softly as she continued to stare ahead of us into the darkness. We're missing something, she mumbled, her feet shifting in the ground below her, moving some gravel. It seemed to get darker in the alleyway as Emma talked. I glanced up to see the cloudless sky above us, and a chill ran down my spine, my protective magic flaring outwards, on edge as Emma continued to mumble to herself. Starian. I feel my body shaking as I hear Winter's concerned voice echo. I don't mean to alarm either of you. He paused, but only for a second. It felt so much longer as his words sunk deep into my skull. But we're trapped. I flinched as Emma swings around, staring at whatever was behind us. I didn't dare look, but I knew I could hear chanting, and that just made everything ache. My body is fighting itself not to transform, and I glance at Emma. She just looks scared, but confused. It's wood? Emma said softly, walking past me. The confusion got to me, finally bringing myself to turn around and stare at the fence that was constructed behind us, blocking us in the small area of an abandoned driveway. I couldn't help but notice the golden glow to it, almost unnoticeable but also very dark, like it admitted darkness instead of light. I looked at Winter, knowing who made this, recognizing the quiet chanting as it got louder. Winter saw my panic and looked around us, anger in his expression as his body and head were on a swivel. Until we heard 3 pairs of footsteps, along with what sounded like hollow wood. I knew who it was before they even showed up over the fence that blocked us in. You guys make this too easy. Ava's voice rang out as she walked up what I could only assume were some manifested stairs, much like the fence. She stood above us, Clinton and Carl at her side, tear stains on their tired faces, their eyes gray and glossy. I glanced between the few of us. Emma was staring at Ava, fear on her face, her eyes black and body shaking. Winter kept his eyes on them, fear as his eyes shook slightly, but brave anger in his clenched jaw. I couldn't take my eyes off of Clinton and Carl as they stood emotionless beside her. Something was very wrong with them. I bit down, clenching my jaw before I took a step towards her. My fist was hot with the fire I was failing to contain. What did you do to them? I yelled, standing my ground. I could see an almost admiring smile on her face as she looked down at me. What, you don't like my new puppets? She laughs, her eyes glowing a bright gold as she lifts her hands, motioning towards Clinton and Carl. I quickly glance over my shoulder as I hear Emma sob quietly. I noticed tears streaming down her face. Both of her eyes were black and glowing brightly, and I could see her staring at Ava, but almost in a sense staring through her. She was always so pathetic. Emma, focus! You're okay here. We're here! I yell before staring back at Ava. My jaw drops as she laughs. Big black wings stretching out from behind her, and a shattered halo shining dimly above her head. I shook my head, planting my feet as I stepped in front of Emma and Winter, turning into my demon form, spreading my wings as I glared at her. My tail swayed violently from side to side. I felt Winter's eyes on me, and I felt bad, but I shook my head, staring down Ava. Winter, just focus on Emma for now. Don't focus on me. I knew I was a half-blood, but I'm sure just being in my demon form made Winter on edge. Winter knelt as Emma fell to her knees, holding her head weakly as tears streamed down her face. I don't want to die. I don't want to go back to it, Emma mumbled to herself, crying softly. I didn't hesitate to form fireballs in my hands as I stared at Ava, anger flowing through my blood, knowing she did this to her. She messed her up. Ava, you sick freak, I spat. I had my assumptions, I had clues, but knowing that this is what you are, it sickens me, and it should sicken you as well. You were once an angel, weren't you? With holy white wings, and I'm sure a normal halo. Isn't this proof enough that what you're doing is wrong? Sacrifices need to be made to make this world pure, and I may be punished for it, but everyone will know that I am right. I don't need holy wings to show it. They'll all know. She chuckled. Now, shut up and die so I don't have to keep looking at that disgusting form. My eyes widen as she points her finger towards me. Clinton and Carl running towards me the moment her finger pointed upwards. I panicked and raised my hand, shooting fireballs towards them, tears filling my eyes at the sight of Jason and Devon filling my mind instead. I quickly looked to my sides where Clinton and Carl had fallen. The fireballs hit their sides and they didn't burn them, but did have quite an impact. Oh, wow. The goody two-shoes pacifist can kill people, Ava said, laughing softly. I could feel my breathing pick up as I glanced between Clinton and Carl, tears streaming down my face as I worried about them. A gasp stuck in my throat as they emotionlessly stood up, standing ready for their next order on either side of me. I could see the pain in their eyes as they shook. Clinton was shaking more than Carl, and I swear I could see the glossiness of their eyes fade momentarily. Shut up! I screamed, creating 2 more fireballs as I glared at Ava. I had no intention of making them harmful. I didn't want to hurt anyone, and I sure as hell didn't want to burn them either. Let's see how much damage you can really do, Ava said, her wings bursting outwards, and I could see the muscles in her arm twitch. I felt frozen as I stared at her, the black feathers glistening a faint gold color before they expanding, bursting towards me with great speed. Her fist aimed at my stomach, and I took too long to react, focusing the few seconds of my attention on Clinton and Carl and what their next move would be. I hadn't even thought about Ava attacking me instead. I coughed, a weak scream coming from my lungs as her fist made contact with my side. Pain shooting through my body, the thoughts of the brick hitting me filled my mind and made me collapse to my knees, holding my side tightly, trying not to pass out like last time. I weakly tried to catch my breath, hearing Winter growl beside me and Emma gasping quickly. Her tail appeared beside her and curling tightly around her leg. I could only stare at the gravel below me before I felt Ava's foot hit my shoulder, knocking me backwards and onto the ground past Emma. I cried out in pain as I lay on the ground. Dust from the gravel below me filled the air around my face and the pain in my eyes as they watered. I could hear Emma's breathing speed up more before she pushed herself to her feet. Winter was already standing beside me and Ava, glancing at Emma to make sure she was okay, but protecting me. I weakly pushed myself up as I heal, my magic slowly bringing the pain down, and Ava snaps her fingers. Clinton and Carl start walking towards us, separating us slightly. "Leave her alone!" Emma screamed as Clinton moved towards me. She formed 2 brilliant big fireballs in her hands, and they seemed to flicker a much brighter red than before. "Don't hurt them!" I yell as I see Clinton's eyes twitch, glancing at Carl to see tears in his eyes. "Something's wrong! It's not them!" I yell, putting my hand up, getting rid of the flame as I put my hand towards Clinton's chest. I held him back gently, and he seemed to pause. He didn't fight me, but I could feel him shaking. Emma glared at Carl as he stood in front of her. "I don't care. They lay a finger on you, and I'm not hesitating this time," Emma said, her fireballs blazing brightly. "Just like a monster," Ava mumbled with a chuckle. I glared at her, my face getting hot, my wings painfully tight at my side, and my tail wrapped around my leg tightly. I noticed Winter growling slightly before he shook his head, his fist clenched tightly, a silver glow coming from it before he took a step forward. A pair of wolf ears appeared on his head, his tail appearing as well, curled up, but still. I couldn't help but admire the softness of the fur that matched his hair. "And look at this new abomination here!" Ava laughed, forming 2 fireballs in her hands, and they glowed black. "I could tell something was wrong with you." I noticed his ears going back as he glared at Ava. That is enough from you. You say one more bad thing about these people and I will rip you to shreds myself, Winter said. His voice deep and a low growl seemed to lace every word. Ava seemed taken aback by his remark. Well, big words from a pup like yourself, Ava spat, stepping forward. I saw his eyes widen, Clinton and Carl standing in front of me and Emma. Spell. I flinched as Carl's voice, raspy and dry, spoke out quietly in front of me. My eyes widened as I noticed the tears filling his eyes. His glossy, gray eyes, unnatural and seemed to glow gold when I brought my other hand up, a soft blue flame in them that shone like light against them. I looked past them at Ava, who was staring down Winter, seeing who would make the first move, eyeing each other down to get an idea of how to attack. I felt my fire flicker uncontrollably in my fist, and I gently pushed Clinton to the side. Ava was focused on Winter, unable to command the puppets of our former friends. All they were was under a spell. I could see that now. I should have known all along. I glanced at Emma, who was hesitantly looking towards me. I felt angry at her. I did know all along. Emma just convinced me otherwise. I shot the fireball towards Ava, taking her by surprise and giving Winter enough time to throw his own attack. A small fireball towards her side as mine hit her face. I flinched as I noticed the redness around her eye, a soft burn mark from my fire. Dry tears filled that eye before she looked at me with such hatred. I felt fear as her eyes glowed, her wings expanding outwards, her halo seeming to crack above her head as her eyes glowed bright gold. The whites of her eyes seemed to dim as she stared at me. Her eyes flickered between Clinton and Carl and me, and a crooked smile appeared on her face as she looked back, raising her finger, pointing towards me, and I felt a painful chill run up my spine as both Clinton and Carl looked at me. Get her, she said slowly, ordering Clinton and Carl to attack me. I could see Clinton trying to fight the spell, and Emma stood in front of Carl, fire blazing. Touch her, and I will kill you. Clinton's eyes seemed to flicker at Emma's words, a pained expression as he shook. I could see him fighting the spell. Don't hurt them! They're under a spell! I yelled, screaming slightly as Clinton grabs my wrist tightly, his nails digging into my skin. I can take them! Focus on Ava! I yelled, pulling down on Clinton's arm, twisting it at the elbow, causing him to crumble to his knees. I promise I will heal you after. I'm sorry, I say, bringing my knee up to his jaw. Carl quickly pounced on me as Clinton fell to the ground. He grabbed my shoulder quickly, landing a weak but well-organized punch to my side. I stumble backwards as I see Emma staring at me. Focus, Emma! I yell, grabbing Carl by his arm and spinning him to throw him away from the group. It's 2 against 1, you idiots! Take her down! Ava screams, forming fireballs in her hands as Emma and Winter form their own to face her. I scream as Clinton comes from behind me, tackling me to the ground as Carl gets up. I try to get up, but Clinton stands on my wings, pinning me to the ground, and Carl came to his side, and all I could see was Jason and Devin standing over me. The muscles in their legs twitched as they readied their stance. I knew what was about to happen, and I hoped at least this time I could control the fire that flickered to life at my fingertips. I looked past momentarily to see Emma and Winter throwing fireballs at Ava, who blocked them with her wings, the black feathers smoldering and some burning off to reveal a red darkness underneath. Just go down! Winter barked, his ears going back as he yelled. Ava smiled as she breathed heavy, her wings blocking the violent fire and shooting back some of hers. Clinton and Carl seemed to await the command to finish the job. Emma was doing a good job at countering the fireballs Ava was throwing, while Winter worked on hitting her with his fireballs. I groaned softly, trying to pull my wing free, but I couldn't. Please, Carl's voice spoke up, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't seem to fight it as well as Clinton could, but he was more aware. I raised my hand to them, tears filling my eyes as my fire flickered to life at my fingertips. Ava noticed, and before she could yell at them, I saw her wings pulled to the ground by silver chains. Winter glared at her, his left eye black and breathing heavily. Ava struggled to keep herself upright, kneeling on the ground, one of her hands trying to keep herself up as she made another fireball in the other. We need to use our fire, Emma said quietly. Winter flinched and sighed as they both raised their hands to the sky, big fireballs forming above them. End her, damn it! Ava spat. My eyes were torn away from the scene that played out as Clinton and Carl's feet drew back. I'd almost forgotten about the fireball in my hands, but quickly closed my eyes, not wanting to see the action I had to do. The fireball flickered. The wind from their feet coming close made the flame spark against my hand before I released it, the fireball striking them both and knocking them backwards just as their feet made contact with my ribs. A quick short pain before there was nothing. I kept my eyes closed as they filled with tears. Clinton and Carl's pain screams filled the air, as well as Ava's. There was so much noise, so much pain. I continued to lay there as the crackling of fire faded, and the noise around it faded too. "Starine," Emma said, running over to me quickly and crouching beside me. I knew what happened to Ava, but I feared too much to open my eyes to see what happened to Clinton and Carl. I didn't want to hurt them. I was so scared that I did just that. "Starine, are you hurt? Are you okay?" I didn't hear anything from Winter, and it scared me even more. What if I did kill them too, and now Winter won't look at me? "It hurts." My eyes shoot open as I hear Carl cry softly. I didn't mean to hurt her, but I pushed Emma out of the way, scrambling to my knees as I stumbled over to them. Clinton and Carl had giant burn marks on their bodies. Their shirts burned away on the sides, and Clinton was leaning against the fence before it disappeared behind him. Ava's magic wears thin around everyone. "You were right," Emma said softly, as Clinton and I kept staring at each other. I needed to heal them, but I could see the fearful anger in his eyes, and knew if I moved now, he would attack me to save Carl. "They were under a spell." Emma's voice got quieter, and I saw her looking at Clinton too, which only made him more scared. I shook my head, blocking Emma out, and glancing at Carl as he clutched his side, curled in a ball beside Clinton. I flinched as he put his hand out, blocking Carl slightly. I slowly moved to sitting on my knees. "I can heal you. I promise I didn't mean to hurt you guys. Please let me heal you," I say softly, silence falling amongst all of us. "It's gonna be scary, and I know you're already scared, but I promise I don't want to hurt anybody. Please, everything hurts so much." I cringed as Carl cried out, tears filling my eyes as I reached for him, but Clinton wouldn't budge and continued to stare at me. "Please," I say softly, putting my hand on his and moving it away from Carl. "I promise I'm not gonna hurt him." I could hear Clinton's heavy breathing, and I tried to close my wings to my side, trying not to seem big, intimidating, or of any danger to them. He hesitantly moved his hand back towards him as I gently placed mine above where Carl was burned. He flinched and stared at me in fear for a second as a small flame appeared in my hand, as I harnessed most of my magic. As the flame sparked a soft blue, I could see Clinton lunge towards me, Carl holding him back as they both stared at me in disbelief. As I healed Carl, the burned skin returned to a soft peachy color, and he smiled at me. Clinton let down his guard as I moved closer to heal the burns on his side, and he just looked at Carl, scared, relieved, tired. As I healed both of them, I turned to Winter and Emma. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ignore you. I just wanted to make sure that they were okay." Emma nodded softly, and I turned my attention towards Winter, who was staring at the burnt mark on the ground, where Ava once stood. The sunlight glowed on it like a spotlight as the fence had faded away. Winter seemed stuck in thought before I cleared my throat, softly flinching as he turned his head towards me. His left eye was black, but riddled with hatred and fear. I glanced over my shoulder to see Emma walking up to Clinton and Carl, apologizing to them with tears in her eyes as she explained everything to them. "Yeah, we really tried to fight the spell she put us in," Clinton said softly. I looked at Winter, approaching him slowly with my hand outstretched. He kind of looked past me, flinching and looking at me worried. "Do you need healing? Are you okay?" I said. He just shakes his head, looking at me with more concern. "Starine," he said softly. "I don't mean to alarm you, but your wing is broken." I shook my head softly, smiling at him. I knew there was a reason I couldn't feel it, but I didn't care. That's alright. I can heal it in a second. Are you hurt? He glanced at his hands. They were a soft red, but he just shook his head. Alright. I smiled at him softly and turned towards Emma, opening my mouth to speak before Winter grabbed my arm gently. Heal, he said. His voice was stern as he glared at me, compassion in his eyes. Please. I sigh and heal my wing, ignoring the pain as the bone shifts back into place. I turn to walk away again before Winter growls softly. All the way. I grumbled to myself and focused on healing my side where I was hit. I knew it was damaged, but I didn't care. Winter looked at me calmly, smiling softly as he tugged my arm towards him, quickly holding me in a hug. I am so proud of you for not falling as far as we did, Winter said softly. I felt him shaking as he held me, and I softly wrapped my arms around him. I knew it was hard for him to do what he did, but it made me smile that he went that far to protect us. We all knew there was no redeeming Ava. Not with how far she fell. After a few seconds, I pull away gently, Winter's hand softly holding onto mine as I move away, held back as he doesn't let go. He looks at the ground, tears slightly filling his eyes, and I felt his hand shake as his jaw clenched. Hey, I say softly. He doesn't tear his eyes away from the floor, so I take a gentle step back towards him. I bring my hand up gently under his chin, lifting it up slightly to meet his eyes. You did the right thing, I promise, I say softly, looking into his eyes and seeing the regret that filled them. It may feel wrong, but she was a threat to everyone. She put spells on them. I motioned towards Clinton and Carl, who were still sitting there recovering. Who knows how many others she did the same thing to? I mumbled before shaking my head. She was a threat not only to demons, but to anyone she deemed unredeemable, which is a big problem. He nodded slowly, looking away, guilt still showing in every twinkle of his eyes. I continue to look into his eyes before he looks back at mine. You did the right thing, I say softly, reiterating that it was better to send her to hell. He finally smiles, his eyes seeming to relax as he defaults to a stern, closed-off gaze. Anger filled his eyes as he glanced at Emma. I ignored it as I finally let go of his hand and walked over to her, asking if she needed any healing. I'm a demon 2-star. I was able to heal anything that hurt, Emma said, smiling at me. I nodded and crouched down beside Clinton and Carl again. They seemed more aware now. Their eyes looked brighter and more lively. I assumed all the magic Ava had over them finally faded. Hey, I said softly, getting their attention. Carl smiled at me, jumping into my arms and making me fall onto my butt. I laughed softly as he hugs me tightly. Hey, it's okay. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Are you both healed well? Was there anything I missed? My words fall short as I feel him sobbing into my arms. Clinton looked at me with a gentle smile, and there seemed to be anguish in his eyes, but a calm thankfulness as well. Thank you. Thank you for not killing us. I'm so sorry I couldn't fight the spell enough, Carl said, grabbing my shirt. Hey, it's okay. She had you both under a pretty strong spell. I was surprised you guys were able to speak, I say, patting his back. Clinton stood up calmly, smiling at me, and then at Emma. Think you guys can forgive us again? Clinton said gently. I don't need to forgive you guys. You did nothing wrong, Emma said, smiling and calmly putting her hands in her pockets. He nodded calmly and then looked at Carl as his sobbing slowed to a stop. I can't imagine how much pain you guys were in. A spell like that would have taken a pretty bad effect on your minds as well, Winter said softly. His voice was lower than usual, calmer but in an off way. Who's this furry? Clinton said, chuckling. Winter flinches, looking at Clinton in a disgusted way. Says the ones who were in furry costumes to ambush us, Emma said, snickering. I meant no harm in asking it. I was sure it's obvious to you two that we were... Anyway, who are you? Clinton said, rambling over his words. Winter Silverstone, he said, groaning slightly. A friend of Star's. Another demon? Carl said softly, sitting in front of me with his hands gently on his knees. Clinton looked confused at him, trying to examine him. Those aren't fake? Clinton said as Winter's ears twitched. He jumped back slightly, making Winter laugh and shake his head. You want to see something better? I smile as Winter stretches his arms up. I couldn't help the small blush that came to my face as the light seemed to glow off of him. I shake my head as he looks over at me, smirking. I snicker at Clinton and Carl's expression as Winter turns into his wolf form, his fur turning a soft, brilliant silver color. That's so cool! Carl said, running up to him, hesitantly stopping right in front of him, his hand reaching towards Winter but pausing. You aren't wild like this, are you? Nope, still me, he said calmly. Can I touch your fur? Carl said, smiling wide. Winter nodded, and the smile on Carl's face only grew as he put his hand to Winter's fur, admiring the softness. I chuckled and smiled at Emma. My smile faded quickly as I noticed her frown, holding her necklace with a pained expression on her face. I put my hand on her shoulder, smiling weakly. You okay, sis? I say softly. She smiled at me, pain in her eyes as she forced down tears. No, she chuckled as tears filled her eyes. I glanced at Clinton and Carl, who were focused on Winter, and I put my hand on her back, leading her out of the small den end to talk with her in peace. I glanced back just as we turned a corner, to see Winter looking at me concerned. I smiled weakly at him, giving him a quick thumbs up as I walked around the corner with Emma. I felt her shaking, and the moment we walked around the corner, she leaned against the fence and fell to her knees, her back sliding against the fence, and she put her head in her hands, running her fingers through her hair, and I calmly sat beside her, putting my wing around her. She used to be our friend, she said softly, tears streaming down her face. No, I mumbled softly, cringing at my words before they even left my mouth. She used to be my friend. Emma looked at me, pained and almost offended. Ava never liked the idea of you, and once she found out, she swore to me that I was making a mistake still being around you. She hated all that you were, no matter how hard I tried to convince her otherwise. So no, she wasn't your friend. She doesn't get the gift of being called your friend, past tense or not. You were too good for her. She smiled softly, but I could notice her shaking still, the pain and tiredness in her eyes. We still killed her, she said softly, and I glared at her, pushing myself off the fence and standing up. She killed you! I say sternly. She killed you for protecting me, for saving me, and then kidnapped me! I sighed as I noticed Emma calmly looking up at me. And I understand it must feel terrible having the ability to kill people who deserve it. I know you feel guilty, but she was prepared to kill us all. Emma looked at the ground, moving some gravel with her feet. It still hurts so much, Emma said weakly. I felt my heart sink, and I sighed as I crouched beside her, putting my hand on her knee. I know. And it probably won't stop hurting, but you're strong, and we can get through this. Emma nodded, and I knew she needed a lot of time now. I couldn't just talk her into feeling better. I glanced over the corner to see Winter looking at the ground as Carl leaned against him, sitting on the ground talking to Clinton. I sighed, knowing even Winter needed time after this. Hell, I did too, but I needed to be strong for them. I continued to sit beside Emma for some time. Eventually, Winter walked out, Clinton and Carl behind him with tired looks on their faces. Looks like everyone needs some sleep. Maybe the whole weekend, I said, chuckling softly. Carl smiled and laughed softly, pulling Clinton along. I helped Emma up and felt today's weight fall onto my shoulders. I chuckled myself as I have to catch my balance. Winter whined softly and nudged my leg. Are you going to be okay to walk home? He said softly. I nod and start walking. I can carry you. I looked at him, thankful he offered, but feeling guilty. He's already been through a lot today, and I don't want him to worry about me. Nah, I'm good, I said, pushing past the thoughts, screaming yes. I waved goodbye to Clinton and Carl as they walked home. But I am so ready to sleep forever, I chuckled. Yeah, Winter said softly, shaking his head and turning into his human form. Or what I thought was his human form until I noticed his ears and tail again. I tilt my head at him. It just feels right. I smiled back at him and nodded, noticing that I was still in my form. I felt confident in it, or at least enough not to transform back the moment I noticed I was still in it. Emma's tail wrapped tightly around her leg as she walked, her wings tight to her sides. I looked at the ground, trying to think of if I wanted to stay in my demon form or not. I knew who I was, and I was okay with who I am now. I looked up at the sky, smiling and turning back in my human form. People knew who I was, and I knew I didn't have to show it. I wasn't hiding in my human form, but relaxing, knowing I could switch whenever I wanted to. I smiled as I looked at the clouds overhead. Very good demons, I say softly. A part of me wanted to convince myself of it, but the rest of me already knew. Emma smiled at me softly and shook her head. Yeah.